Trigger warning, the following video contains raccoons and mentions of the word coon. If you're offended by raccoons, then you need to follow the link down below and remember to come back only after listening to all of it to call me a cocksucker in the comment section, okay? Well, I'm certainly glad to be back. As I've said before, my schedule can be quite hectic, and between that and discovering the magical art of Twitter, I've been rather busy these days. Anyway, tonight's entertainment, thank God, doesn't take the form of anything to do with feminism. I'm sure at this stage people are going to be more than grateful for that. So once again, for some insane reason, I'm covering a clusterfuck of an article that involves sports. I don't even like sport. This time it involves sports, video games, and racism into one delightful whirligig of douchebaggery and assorted chicanery that makes me so angry that I'm definitely going to stick to the script on this one. Now first off, I'd like to just define my definition of what I see this article as being. Race bait. More specifically, race bait and link bait combined together into one lucrative combination to put dollars in advertising coffers. And of course, like we would be surprised, Kotaku and its sports guru, like that's a fucking job, Owen Good, are behind this colossal fuck up of epic proportions. So, of course, after this, I'm declaring finished on Kotaku. I simply refuse to give them any more of my precious attention after this article, and I hasten to add the original article's link down below on Pastebin, ensuring that these sorry sons of bitches won't be getting a red cent of advertising revenue out of my subscribers. Anyway, with all that house cleaning finished, let's just take a look at the disaster piece itself, shall we?
If I learnt anything this past week, it's that some people will find any context in which an ethnic slur is not an ethnic slur, will find some justification for its use, from the name of a video game to that of a football team.
We'll get into his lack of basic understanding of communication theory in a second, especially since it's a subject that I've actually studied at a university level, but suffice to say that this is an incredibly vague statement. Look, context determines meaning. It's a basic rule of communication and especially linguistics. I mean, you can choose to fly in face of this basic rule of one of the most established academic fields out there, Mr. Journalist, but you're going to be pushing soup uphill with a fork.
Really, the reactions were almost swappable. In Washington, the rumblings that the Redskins might relocate to a stadium in the city limits sparked a city councilman's call for the team to reconsider its nickname of obvious racist origin, and the usual backlash against it. In video games, a student project out of the Netherlands billed itself as Starcoon, born of an understandable language disconnect, but one that still invoked the top 5 racial slur in the company of Spade, Spook, and the Biggin.
Okay, so what he's reacting to here is actually the reaction that he has gotten personally from his own readership, a delicious morsel which we'll devour later. But okay, obviously we have a false conflation here between the issue of the Redskins football team, their name and brand, obviously a hot topic in Washington DC right now, and a tiny independent game studio, and I mean tiny, from the other side of the world changing the name of its game. Almost swappable doesn't mean that it is. Saying that something is almost comparable to another is really a very weak argument at best. Assuming that both trends of behavior that you observed are somehow related is also faulty. Correlation does not equal causation. Basically, you're going to have to come a lot harder than that, sweetheart. As for the top 5 racial slurs, that's just so pathetically subjective and ethnocentric, I really don't know what to say. I mean, some of those words are certainly words that work in other contexts and are not actually racist by default and were never intended to be racist ever when they were created. But we will get into that next. And by the way, as an aside, can any member of my American audience explain to me the origin of the word spook as a racist term? I mean, the KKK dress up like it was a Halloween sale at the White Trash Bed Bath & Beyond, so if anyone's running around the countryside cosplaying as Casper the Friendly Ghost, it certainly ain't the black folks. But I digress, let's move on.
Starcoon, however, changed its name, recognizing the embarrassment it would inevitably suffer if the game became a success in an English-speaking country. Yes, right, the protagonist of the platform is a raccoon. Unless the truncated word is preceded by mane or followed by hound, you will have a problem on this side of the Atlantic. And in this case, it sounded like a ridiculous sci-fi blaxploitation film starring Bill Connor as the villain. Wisely, the creators bailed on the original name, rebranding it as Curio Star Quest.
Okay, this is where the rest of the world starts to take umbrage with this bullshit. In the country where I live, spook, spade, and even the dreaded N-word have absolutely no meaning. They're simply not part of the lexicon here as racist insults. A game called Starcoon would not even raise an eyebrow here or any country that is not the continental United States. Sir, there is something beyond the nearest Walmart and the nearest Glock vending machine, and that's called the rest of planet Earth, a planet which you should consider visiting sometime. So now it's time for a small adventure into the wonderful world of Microsoft Paint to illustrate why he's wrong even further. Okay, so what he's doing here is basically the linguistic equivalent of soothsaying. So the word that we're supposed to be taking huge offense to is Starcoon. Right? Now the author says you can decompose this into two particular words, and star of course means star in space, and coon means, as we all know, but here's the thing, okay, this is meant to be read as one singular word. It's kind of like saying the word cocoon is racist along the similar lines. Not really. It's basically the, as I said, equivalent of soothsaying, looking for things that aren't really there. I mean, as a word, Starcoon is basically completely meaningless besides describing the game. And of course then there's other things, like he mentions the word spade. Here's the thing. Spade is only a racist insult when it's used to describe a person, but it can describe a wide variety of things. That describing a person isn't its primary meaning. So the whole problem with all of this is that he just doesn't understand one of the most basic rules of linguistics, which is context determines meaning. Okay? If you use the word coon to describe a small furry animal, it is not a racist slur, which is what makes the statement at the beginning, some people will find any context which it isn't a racist slur. Yes, there are plenty of contexts in which these words coon and spade exist without them being racial slurs. Fucking deal with it. And there we go. It's really true that the No Child Left Behind policy was bullshit, because it seems to have left the child behind right here and he thinks he can write an article. But anyway, let's move on.
The reaction was depressingly predictable. We're told all of the time that the average age of gamers is getting older, but their emotional maturity and concept of life in a pluralist society seems to be stuck somewhere around the freshman year of high school. On average, it's a demographic no more sophisticated than meat-headed sports fans.
Well, considering you don't understand rudimentary linguistics, you're really not one to be giving us a lecture. So take this colouring book and these crayons and fuck off to the corner for a few seconds while the adults have a chat. Anyway, I really have to ask, what the fuck is he hoping to gain here? He's spitting in the face of both of his audiences simultaneously. I mean, he reports on sports games. Comparing gamers to sports fans in an unfavourable light is basically career suicide. Now Owen, put down the scissors and come off that chair.
It doesn't matter if the entirety of an ethnic minority is or isn't offended by a word, and it doesn't matter if you say that you knew a black guy or a Native American who has no problem with it. Good for you. I really doubt he exists. It doesn't matter if a majority in a poll say they're fine with the name, and it doesn't matter that the word is inoffensive if it describes peanuts or potatoes. And political correctness, the liberal media, and every other horseshit straw man you construct has nothing to say here. What matters is that $1 billion business and its loyal consumers in the year 2013 identify themselves with a racial insult. It matters that it's a term of derision. Inferiority and hate is being directed at the product on the field and by those who sell it and buy it. How is it different from the Washington shitheads? How is it even dignified? That is why Starcoon changed its name. That is why the Washington Redskins should change theirs.
Well, I'm really glad that we have good people like you out there, Owen, to tell all of us idiots what really matters. I'm also glad that you don't know what the hell a straw man argument is. I guess you read it on Wikipedia and thought it sounded good. Way to gain leverage over all those pesky dissenters. Also, your disdain for the democratic process does come through quite nicely. I don't know the situation with the Redskins, and quite frankly I don't really care, but I'm all for the recognition of America's shameful race history with the Native Americans. But, you know, this heavy heavy-handed moralizing is not going to win you any allies. In fact, it's going to give the right wing further ammunition to throw at you, so great job there. Oh, and before I go, in the middle of the article, little Owen here mentions that the Washington Post wrote an article about the thing. He dismisses the article as being written by the official white man's newspaper, and some other dribble-lipped flim-flammery nonsense bullcrap, and the link he provides goes to a quote-unquote refutation, in the loosest term possible, of the article on Kotaku containing 2 quote mines. Great professional standard there, guys. But the article in question actually does raise a good point, though I don't agree with all of it, and in fact here's a quote that's quite hits the nail on the head.
A manufactured controversy over the name of a football team is a convenient way to direct attention away from scandal and sordid behaviour. You should leave the management of the Redskins to those who actually know what they're doing.
I mean, in light of things like domestic abuse victim shelters being defunded, arguing about what to call the local football team seems pretty petty and ludicrous, but whatever, it's not like wasting government's money and increasing the deficit can really make things that much worse. Ultimately though, the real problem with this article is that Owen Good and by proxy Kotaku are in a catch-22 bind. If they are wrong, which they most definitely are as I've just proved, then they are just dishonest, greedy, money-grubbing, race-baiting fucks. If Owen has proved his point though, then Kotaku's core readership is chocked to the brim with white supremacists. Either way, I cannot see how any living being could ever trust any of the information given out by an organisation with such a shitty editorial process, unless you're paint-drinkingly retarded. In either case, I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Thank you a whole lot to all my new subscribers. I appreciate all of you, even if now there are way too many of you guys for me to know you all by name. But anyway, I'll see all you people later. And as always, it's me, Dangerous Analysis, wishing you a very big
good night and good luck.